Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So of course this weekend, May the 4th, Canelo Alvarez defends his super middleweight undisputed crown against Jaime Munguia. An all-Mexican battle, a fight that in my opinion has somewhat gone under the radar. Maybe it's because I haven't been paying attention, but for me the build-up to this fight has been pretty low-key. Doesn't seem much buzz around this fight, but maybe that's just my perception. I'm still pretty sure it does okay in terms of numbers. You know, a fight between two Mexicans, one holding the undisputed crown, the other challenging for those titles. So I'm sure it does okay, but yeah, for me it just doesn't have that big fight feel. How do I feel about this fight? I think, one thing I will say, I think one of the reasons why there may not be as much excitement for this fight is because I think a lot of people now are clamouring for a David Benavidez fight. When he was looking at 168 in the last year or so, Benavidez, for me, and for many people, was the obvious choice at 168 in regards to Canelo opponents. You know, Benavidez seemed like the most dangerous contender out there, and the reality is public perception is important, and many of the public believe Canelo is the guy who doesn't want that fight, so that might be another reason as to why this fight doesn't feel as big as maybe it could have. But the fight itself is a weird one to me. I believe if Jaime Munguia comes to fight, I actually believe he'll give Canelo a harder fight than some people are expecting. Now, don't get me wrong, Munguia in certain ways plays into Canelo's hands. Munguia is very aggressive. He takes a lot of chances. He throws a lot of punches. He leaves a lot of openings. And a guy like Canelo is a very astute counterpuncher with the left hook, the overhand right, the uppercut, can counter to the body as well. We know against a come-forward guy, Canelo can really find those openings and go to town on them, no doubt about it. And let's be honest, yeah, Munguia takes a lot of risks, but generally he's not a great defensive fighter. He's there to be hit, to be honest. Whether you're countering him or being aggressive against him, he's there to be hit. Doesn't usually move his head. As a fight plays out, he's got a habit of leaning over his front foot, which means he's there for the uppercut against Canelo Alvarez. He's going to get hit in this fight. For me, this fight really boils down to how well Munguia can take that punching power of Canelo. Because one thing we know about Canelo as he's got older, as he's gone through the weights, his feet have slowed down. No doubt in my mind about that. And his punch output has decreased. Munguia, just basics, Munguia throws a lot more punches than Canelo Alvarez. Hypothetically, well, realistically, if he can take Canelo's punches without serious trouble, don't get me wrong, they're going to hurt him, but if he can take those shots without serious trouble, he will give Canelo a hard fight just based on his activity, because Munguia throws a lot of punches. He throws punches in bunches. However, one thing I want to see from Munguia, and while he was with Eric Morales, he done a much better job at adding his jab to the equation. Beforehand, he was very much a guy who would walk you down. There wasn't much of a jab to speak of. And, you know, he would try to crowd you, work the body. You know, he would lead off with power shots and hooks, etc. But there really wasn't much of a jab. When Morales trained Munguia, you could see him trying to add things to his game. Certain performances they came through, others not so much. But one of the main things Morales did with Munguia was the fact that he got him to jab. And we saw this against John Ryder in his last fight. In my opinion, that was Munguia's career best performance. I loved the way that Munguia was pressuring from the outside, behind that jab, firing the jab on a consistent basis, followed by a long right hand, and he was walking down John Ryder. And he would use those straight punches to close the distance and then smother John Ryder, and he would get out and repeat basically. But his boxing, his aggressive boxing from the outside, was the best I've seen it against John Ryder. By the way, John Ryder has a somewhat similar style to Canelo, difference being he's a southpaw and nowhere near as good, but stylistically, they share some similarities, and even in regards to their posture in the ring and their size, how they're built, John Ryder is similar to Canelo in a few ways. And we saw how effective Munguia was on the outside. Obviously, Canelo is a much more astute counterpuncher, a more quick-handed counterpuncher than John Ryder, and a harder puncher, but I think the dimensions and physicality of Munguia can give Canelo trouble if he utilises the right game plan. I think he needs to build on what he was doing against John Ryder, pressuring from the outside with a consistent jab, as well as the straight right hand behind it. Maybe don't start so gung-ho in the early rounds because Canelo's going to be fresh, but we've seen with Canelo, can he fight for 12 rounds under a high pace? We saw Dimitri Bivol set a rhythm against Canelo. I know Bivol is a totally different style to Munguia, but we saw him set a rhythm that Canelo couldn't keep up with. And when Canelo was losing that fight, he didn't really have the stamina to chase it. Can Munguia do something similar in this bout? Not in regards to the boxing display, but setting a rhythm, setting a pace that is too hard for Canelo to follow. Again, I don't think he's best suited to go gung-ho early, to take risks early, but what he can do is be very consistent with the jab early. Be super busy with that jab, trying to maintain the range, trying to utilise the height and reach. Maybe try and nick the early rounds without really doing too much, and then, from early, try and make Canelo chase the fight, and after that point, then possibly raise the activity level and raise the pace of the fight, and try to force a pace that is hard for Canelo to follow and to keep up with. I really do believe Munguia is going to have more success in this fight than people make out. The issue I have with Munguia, like a lot of people, are the defensive holes, the vulnerabilities in his game. We've seen in fights, Munguia sometimes goes through lulls where he really does blow a gasket. He's super busy, super active with his hands, and for a couple of rounds he's not really doing much. I don't think you can do that in this sort of fight against Canelo. Number one, you let Canelo get a foothold back in the fight, and you let him land some damaging shots, but it's not a good look for judges. Number two, when Munguia gets hit, I think he loses his construct far too easily, and that is going to play into Canelo's hands. Again, a guy who is not wasteful with his punches, a guy who delivers good counters, is relatively accurate. If Munguia gets hit and he loses his head, loses his shape, that could be a big problem. We saw that against Derevyanchenko, for example. When Munguia gets hit, he kind of loses it and tries to get it back, but that could result in him getting knocked out or dropped or hurt against Canelo. So he needs to be more disciplined than we've seen him in his previous fights. But what Munguia does have is the physicality, the stamina, and the punch output to really give Canelo a hard fight, in my opinion. I believe a big part of this fight is going to be how well he takes a shot. Now, Munguia so far hasn't shown to have a bad chin, don't get me wrong, but Derevyanchenko hurt him, no doubt in my mind. John Ryder, I wouldn't say he hurt Munguia, but definitely got his attention. Rosado hurt Munguia as well. Munguia can be hurt. Can Canelo hurt Munguia? I believe he can, but to me it's to what extent. Can he hurt Munguia seriously enough to where he can stop him or even knock him out in one shot? I don't think he knocks out Munguia in one punch, but he can certainly hurt him and then finish him, in my opinion. Can Munguia fight through that if he does get hurt? That's going to be one of the interesting factors in this fight, is how Munguia's chin holds up. Because if it does hold up, and he goes in there with ambition, he's going to give Canelo a hard fight, in my opinion. Especially this version of Canelo, who I believe is slowing down. But, listen, I'd much rather see a Benavidez fight, but at the same time, I don't mind this fight. I just hope Munguia goes in there and gives it his all. I hope he doesn't lay down. If he doesn't lay down, it's going to be a good fight. It's going to be a good fight. I still think he'll come up short, to be honest. I think he'll give Canelo too many openings. But it's a decent fight. It's a decent fight. But anyway, just wanted to get my brief thoughts out there on this fight. Haven't really had time to think about it, to be honest. Probably can tell by my voice and my speech patterns. I'm not too well right now. My throat is killing me. So, yeah, I've got to keep fucking swallowing. Pause. It's annoying as hell. But yeah, is what it is. Share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy. Peace.